Hi, thanks for joining me today. I hope you're keeping well, and welcome to the shores of the beautiful Lake Wanataka on South Island, New Zealand, where I'm currently touring around in a camper van. I wanted to have a conversation with you tonight about a particular spiritual discipline that most Christians either ignore or don't utilize to its greatest power. I wonder if that might be the same with you as well. And I'm going to think with you about 5 reasons why this particular spiritual discipline is a bit of a spiritual superpower when it comes to helping us grow in faith, when it comes to helping us grow in our relationship with God, and to develop our character as well. But just before I tell you what this spiritual discipline actually is, let me tell you why it's come to mind to me over the last 24 hours to have this conversation with you. I've been touring around South Island, New Zealand, and yesterday I went to see the extraordinary Franz Josef glacier. You may know that a glacier is a river of ice. Over thousands and thousands of years, snow gets compacted on these rivers, and the rivers then freeze and they become frozen rivers of ice. And the Franz Josef glacier is one of the most extraordinary sights that I have ever seen. And when you look at the glacier, it looks absolutely still. It looks absolutely silent. It looks motionless, as though nothing is happening at all. But actually, housed within that glacier is an extraordinary amount of power and even movement. The glacier can move up to 5 meters every single day. And not only can it move up to 5 meters a day, it can also pick up rocks and pull the rocks down over several kilometers as well. So that which looks silent and still and motionless is actually packed with power and movement and force and energy. And it reminded me of the spiritual discipline of silence, which many Christians really don't utilize as well as we should, if at all. And I want to tell you today 5 reasons why you should integrate the spiritual discipline of silence into your own life if you don't already, or maybe to think about increasing it if you already do. And the first is this, that silence, sitting in silence before God, helps develop humility. Humility is, of course, the starting point of all spirituality, isn't it? It's the moment when we sit before God and we surrender everything that we are to Him, everything that we own, all our thoughts, all our dreams, our desires, our ambitions, everything gets surrendered to God. And that is an act of humility on our part. In Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 20, we read this: "Let all the earth keep silence before Him." It's like the whole of creation is silent in humility before God. And in Job chapter 40, verses 4 and 5, Job sat in silent humility before God, recognizing that God's wisdom was more powerful than his own. So we know in Scripture that there are many examples of just sitting in silence before God and acknowledging His authority and His power over us, His sovereignty, that He is King of Kings and Lord of Lords in our life. And as we sit in silence, so our dispensation towards humility grows and grows. So if you want to get the foundations right in your spiritual life, if you want to get humility right, it starts with silence and just surrendering everything to God. The second reason why silence is such a hugely important spiritual discipline is that it also helps us to hear God's voice more clearly. Psalm 46 verse 10 says, of course, "Be still and know that I am God." There is a link between being still and embracing silence and hearing God, being aware of God's presence with us, being intimate with God. The world is so noisy, isn't it? The noise of the world drowns out God's voice very often. All the kind of responsibilities that we've got to juggle, our work, our family, our friends, our finances. And then, of course, there's social media, and there's, just everywhere. There's noise. And it can be really hard to hear God amidst the noise of the world. And we need to create silence in our lives, places of silence, in order to just listen out for the voice of God. We're reminded, aren't we, of the story of Elijah in 1 Kings chapter 19, where, the thunder passed by, but God wasn't in the thunder. The earthquake passed by, and God wasn't in the earthquake. The fire passed by, and God wasn't in the fire. And then there was that small whisper of a wind, effectively, and God was in that whisper. And so, we need to create space and create silence so that we can hear the whisper of God towards us that is so often drowned out by noise. And once we hear God speak to us more clearly, my goodness me, how our lives can be transformed. Thirdly, and building on from that, I would say using silence as a spiritual discipline helps us to embrace inner peace and patience. Patience is really important. Waiting on God is really important. And in Exodus chapter 14, verse 14, for example, we read this: "The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." It feels counterintuitive, doesn't it? In all the battles of life, in all the chaos that we face, in all the kind of decisions that need to be made, in the anxieties and the stresses of everyday living, to be told there, the Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. We've got to resist the urge to react in our lives. We've got to surrender control of our lives over to God. And as we do that, as we sit in silence before God and surrender our lives to Him, then that brings us peace, inner peace. That helps us to develop patience. And as we develop patience, so that will improve our work, it will improve our ministries, we'll become more patient in our relationships, we'll become more patient in working towards our goals in life as well. So inner peace and patience are really important attributes and traits to own, as it were. And they, again, are born out of silence. We see that in Jesus' own life, of course, in Luke chapter 4, when he went off into the wilderness before his public ministry and just had 40 days and nights of silence. And in that silence, he was able to draw closer to God. He was able to get the peace that he needed in his heart to prepare him for the ministry that laid ahead, and to kind of develop all the patience that he would need in that public ministry. So Jesus models that for us in his wilderness experience. Fourthly, if we embrace silence as a spiritual discipline, it helps us to control our emotions. Proverbs 29 verse 11 says, "A fool gives full vent to his spirit, but a wise man quietly holds it back." Very often we are tempted just to vent our frustration or to vent our anger, and we end up saying things that we will regret, if not just for a short time, maybe even for the rest of our lives. So we need to be really careful how we use words and how we express our emotions in our most unguarded moments. And what happens is, the more time we spend in silence with God, the more time we spend developing this spiritual discipline of silence, then it helps us to then develop new skills in our social situations. It helps us to develop the skill of pausing. It helps us to develop the skill of reflecting on what's happening. It helps us to develop the skill of responding slower in situations and thereby to respond more wisely. So silence is also therefore a training ground for social skills that are really important, so that we don't say and do things that we might later regret. Jesus, again, models that for us in Matthew chapter 27, when he's going through his unjust trials before his crucifixion. And very often he doesn't say anything, does he? He just is able to kind of bite his lip and not respond in such a way as would wind up the Jewish authorities or Pontius Pilate. There was a profound wisdom to his silence. He didn't feel the need to justify himself at all. So the model for us of when to be silent and when to speak and how to speak is modeled to us by Jesus in Matthew 27. And fifthly and finally, I would say that silence as a spiritual discipline, the more we develop it, trains us to listen to other people better. James chapter 1 verse 19 says, "Let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger." Now, silence as a spiritual discipline is not just about us not speaking. It's also about us actively listening as well. It's about us learning the skill and the gift of deep listening, to deeply connect to other people and to hear what they are saying to us and to hear the words that actually lie underneath the words they're using. Does that make sense? Really deep listening. So if you train yourself through silence to be able to listen better to other people, then that will, of course, improve your relationships. It will improve your relationships with your spouse or partner or children or other family members. It will improve your relationship with your friends. It will improve your ministry in and through the church. It will improve your performance at work. All areas of your life will improve if you learn how to listen actively to other people, and that begins through the training, as it were, of silence. And again, Jesus gives us so many examples in Luke chapter 2 and in Mark chapter 10 and other places of where, he listens to people first, and then he asks the right questions before he speaks to them. There's 5 reasons why I think silence is such a hugely important spiritual discipline for us. And it seems to be one that I think is much neglected in the Christian world. We don't spend enough time in silence, but I think silence is a spiritual superpower for growth and, as a Christian, for intimacy with God and for effective living. So I would encourage you each and every day just to find, at the beginning, just to find 10 minutes a day. Switch your phone off, switch your notifications off, switch off all contact with other people, turn off the TV, turn off the radio, whatever it is that may be distracting you, and just find 10 minutes just to be still before God and silent. You don't even need to say anything to God. Don't bring your prayer requests to him. Don't bring your anxieties and your fears. Just listen to your breathing, listen for the voice of God, and just sit in silence. Just start with 10 minutes a day, and then we can work to build this spiritual discipline in your life. But it's so important. Do practice it and see how it begins to transform your faith and your character and your intimacy with God. I would say, ultimately, silence is not something for us to build into our day. Silence is something that we should shape our life around. But maybe that's a conversation for another day to go that deep. Hope that's been helpful. Thank you so much for being with me today and giving me so much of your time. I always appreciate it, as you know. So from Lake Wanataka on South Island in New Zealand, I wish you a really good rest of the day, and I look forward to being with you again very soon. Take care. Bye.